My wife said, "This success is mine, your blue-collar family will only drag me down." She said this during the celebration dinner after we sold our company for a fortune. I didn't argue. I just smiled, nodded, and toasted her name. The buyers will be thrilled to learn the core patent was never part of the sale. Don't miss the twist. Subscribe and be part of the journey. I, Liam, 40, male, had been with Serena, 38, for 15 years, married for 12. Our life was a carefully constructed narrative of success, set against the backdrop of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We were the co-founders of Clearwater Solutions, a company built on a revolutionary water purification technology I had developed in my father's garage. I was the chief technology officer, the quiet inventor. Serena, with her MBA and polished family background, was our CEO, the public face of the company. I came from a family of steelworkers and mechanics. My hands were comfortable with tools and schematics. Serena's family were fourth-generation bankers who saw my background as a charming, rustic novelty. We lived in a minimalist mansion in Sewickley Heights, a home she had designed to erase any trace of my blue-collar roots. Our social life was a calendar of her choosing, filled with fundraisers and galas where she would tell a sanitized version of our origin story, one where my garage was a boutique innovation lab. The company was our child, but we had different ideas about how to raise it. I wanted to grow slowly, focusing on municipal and disaster relief applications. Serena wanted to chase venture capital and a massive buyout. For years, she had been courting Global Bev Corp, a multinational beverage conglomerate. They finally made an offer of $50 million for a complete acquisition. Serena saw it as her coronation, the culmination of her ambition. I saw it as a cage, but one I had long been preparing for. Update 1, Serena was ecstatic about the Global Bev offer. She talked of nothing else. "This is our ticket, Liam," she would say. An escape from all this provincial thinking. I expressed concerns about the terms of the deal, about the fate of our employees, about the core mission of the technology. "Don't be so sentimental," she responded, waving a dismissive hand. "This is business. It's time to stop thinking like a tinkerer and start thinking like a king." Her friends, a circle of investment bankers and corporate lawyers, echoed her sentiments. At a dinner party, one of them clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You hit the lottery, Liam. Don't fumble the ticket." What none of them knew was that I had spent the past year working quietly with my own personal patent attorney. The core patent for the purification technology was in my name alone, filed and granted 2 years before Clearwater Solutions was even incorporated. The company operated under a licensing agreement, a crucial detail buried in our founding documents. My lawyer had drafted the acquisition paperwork to ensure that the sale of the company terminated this license, and that the patent itself did not transfer with the assets. While Serena celebrated with her friends, I was quietly building my exit. I established a new personal holding company in Colorado. I opened a series of tiered bank accounts, preparing to move my share of the proceeds into a protected structure. I was preparing not for a partnership in wealth, but for a clean and total separation. Update 2, the deal closed on a Tuesday. That Friday, Serena hosted a lavish celebration dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city. Our lawyers, bankers, and the executive team from Global Bev were all there. The champagne flowed freely. Serena stood to give a speech, her voice resonating with triumph. She spoke of her vision, her strategy, her relentless drive. She mentioned my name only once, a brief nod to the technical genius behind the product. Later in the evening, as the crowd thinned, she came to our table, her eyes glittering with a cold fire. It was just the two of us. This is when she told me that my family, my blue-collar roots, were an anchor she was finally cutting loose. She saw the $50 million not as our success, but as her liberation from me and my world. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. The time for confrontation was long past. I simply raised my glass, looked her in the eye, and said, "To you, Serena. You got everything you wanted." She thought I was defeated. In truth, I was simply watching the final pieces of my own plan fall perfectly into place. Update 3, The fallout for me was silent and swift. The day after the dinner, while Serena was flying to Paris for a celebratory shopping trip, I moved out. I didn't take any furniture from the mansion. I packed my clothes, my personal research notebooks, and the framed photo of my father and me in his garage, holding the first working prototype. I left my keys and my wedding ring on the cold marble of the kitchen island. I drove west. The journey from the green hills of Pennsylvania to the stark, beautiful mountains of Colorado was a cleansing of the soul. I didn't feel anger or sadness. I felt the quiet, profound relief of a man who had just executed a flawless escape. My new life began in a small, rented cabin in the mountains outside Boulder. It was the complete antithesis of my old life. The house was simple, made of wood and stone, and my nearest neighbor was a mile away. My days were spent hiking, sketching out new ideas, and breathing clean air. The $25 million from the sale sat untouched in my new accounts. It wasn't a prize to be spent, it was the foundation for what came next. Update 4. For 6 months, the world heard nothing from me. I let Serena have the stage. She was a fixture in the society pages, photographed at galas in New York and on yachts in Monaco. She had launched a venture capital firm, positioning herself as a visionary investor. Meanwhile, in my quiet cabin, I was building. I founded a new company, NextGen Purification, and hired a small, hand-picked team of engineers. We weren't just recreating my old technology, we were perfecting it, making it cheaper, more efficient, and more adaptable. I filed for a new series of patents, building a fortress of intellectual property around the original core invention. My father and brother flew out to visit. They spent a week helping me set up my new lab, a state-of-the-art facility I had built in a nondescript commercial park. There were no reporters, no galas. Just the quiet satisfaction of good work done with family. I was creating a company built on a foundation of integrity, a direct response to the one I had left behind. Update 5. The first public move from NextGen Purification was a press release. It announced a strategic partnership with a major international aid organization to deploy our new technology in disaster-stricken areas around the world. The story was picked up by several major tech and environmental journals. The articles praised our innovation and our humanitarian mission. My name and my new title, founder and CEO, were prominent. At the same time, the lawyers for Global Bev Corp were coming to a horrifying realization. The $50 million company they had acquired was essentially an empty shell. They had the branding, the customer lists, and the manufacturing facilities, but they had no legal right to produce the product. Every unit they had manufactured and sold in the past 6 months was an act of patent infringement. My lawyer sent them a simple, polite cease and desist letter. The letter that went to Serena from Global Bev's legal department was, I imagine, considerably less polite. The first panicked email from her arrived in my new company's general inbox an hour later. It was the first of many. Update 6. She flew to Boulder and appeared at my office without an appointment. The polished CEO was gone, replaced by a woman whose eyes were wide with panic. I met her in our small, simple conference room. Liam, you have to fix this, she said, her voice trembling. Global Bev is threatening to sue me for everything. They're calling it fraud. That sounds like a problem for you and Global Bev, I replied calmly. This is your fault, she said, her voice rising. You set me up. I did nothing of the sort, I countered, my voice still even. You were the CEO. You signed the acquisition documents. Did you not read the section on intellectual property licensing? Or were you too busy planning your victory tour? She insisted it was a simple mistake, an oversight. She claimed she had changed. I saw your interview in that financial magazine last month, I said, my voice turning to ice. The one where you talked about your innate business acumen and how you had to drag a reluctant, provincial inventor into the modern world. Your mistake wasn't in the paperwork, Serena. It was in believing your own press releases. I stood up. I have a meeting to get to, I said. You should probably find a good lawyer. Update 7. Her legal strategy was an act of pure desperation. She filed a lawsuit against me, claiming I had committed marital fraud by not disclosing the full details of the patent license to her. Her lawyers argued that as my wife, she had a right to my intellectual property. My legal team eviscerated her claim in pre-trial motions. They produced the prenuptial agreement we had both signed, an agreement she had insisted upon, which clearly stated that all assets and intellectual property owned prior to the marriage remained separate property. The patent was listed as my primary asset. Her lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. Global Bev's lawsuit against her, however, moved forward with terrifying speed. They sought the return of her full $25 million share, plus punitive damages. The business press had a field day. The story of the brilliant CEO who had failed to secure the core asset in a $50 million acquisition became a legendary cautionary tale. Her reputation as a visionary investor was destroyed overnight. Update 8. A year later, the dust had settled. Serena, after a brutal legal battle, had been forced to return most of her fortune to Global Bev in a settlement. She had sold the mansion and disappeared from public life. Next-gen purification, on the other hand, was a phenomenal success. We had just closed a round of funding that valued the company at $300 million. I had moved from my cabin to a beautiful, sustainable home I had designed myself, a house that worked in harmony with the landscape. And my life was full again. I had met a woman named Anna, a brilliant patent attorney who had consulted for our firm. Our relationship was a quiet, easy partnership built on mutual respect for each other's minds and work. We were building a future together. I received one last letter from Serena, forwarded by my lawyer. It was a handwritten note, stripped of all the old arrogance. It was a simple, stark admission of her own greed and a hollow, broken apology. I read it, then placed it in a folder with the rest of the legal documents. It was just another piece of the historical record. Final update. A few months ago, I was in Pittsburgh to visit my family. My father, now retired, was healthier and happier than I had seen him in years. While there, I had a meeting with the head of the local university's engineering department, a wise old professor who had been a mentor to me in my early days. He had also been a reluctant admirer of Serena's business skills. I saw what happened with Serena and Global Bev, he said, shaking his head. She was one of the smartest business minds I've ever seen. But she made a classic mistake. What was that? I asked. She thought the value was in the brand, in the marketing, in the deal itself, he explained. She forgot that the real value, the only thing that truly matters, is the thing you can hold in your hand. The invention. The foundation. Those words resonated with a deep truth. The lesson I had learned was one my father had taught me in his garage years ago. You can build a flashy exterior, but if the core engineering is flawed, the entire structure will eventually collapse. A life, like a company, must be built on a foundation of integrity, hard work, and respect for the real source of its strength. My story ends here, in my home in Boulder, with Anna by my side. My work is challenging, my life is peaceful, and my future is my own. I didn't just escape a toxic marriage. I reclaimed my own creation.